All right. So I have a cold, so I'm a little bit puffy, and I couldn't tell whether the microphone was working in the first try. So I started again. It turned out the microphone was working. And it's interesting because it's like having a cold. It's like that one little inconvenience has me like sort of already exhausted. But I read this. So this is the introduction to the top down creating and building. And I did read this with no sound. And I'm actually keeping that up because I'm going to keep that video up just as a reminder in this process that there were a couple times that happened where I really spoke pretty like I went pretty hard and and for whatever reason, the sound didn't work. And I just want to remember that that's something that happened. So I'm leaving that one up, even though it might be kind of frustrating. But here we are. So I'm not going to talk too much because I'm not feeling that great about what this process represents. That'll come up in the upcoming readings. I just wanted to show up. I just wanted to show up and continue this process. And so here we are. If you're following along in the book, we're on page 289. This is chapter 12. And this is from the top down, creating and building. And I think the one thing that I will mention, and I have mentioned this, I think, in other readings before, but why not get into it here, is that this is a chapter about using the downward current of the hubs. So it's starting, and in this, I think the reading addresses this. So it goes in the reverse direction. But I think the thing that I do want to mention that isn't in here is that this is really challenging, and it works. So there's a lot of, like manifestation guidance that's either like primarily practical, it's like habits and doing. And then there's other manifestation camps that are really philosophical, that are like, positive thinking and getting into states of gratitude, things like that. And this is a methodology that is really about dharma. This is very challenging. This is not the easy road. To do this work in earnest is to actually create significant transformation. But the fact that transformation is in fact so disruptive, it has this gating, the difficulty of it has this gating quality that keeps you from being disrupted before you're actually actively courting it and ready for it. So there's this kind of yeah, we'll get into it. I'm going to read this. I think the reading will explain a lot, I think. Here we go. You ready? Here we are. Okay. So chapter 12, from the top down, creating and building. Oh my gosh, it's so funny with my cold. I feel like I'm in I don't know what, I mean, you've had a cold before, you know what this is like. Okay, so whatever good things we build end up building us. And it's a quote by Jim Rohn. So I discuss the bottom-up approach to self-actualization throughout part 2 and in chapter 11. Starting from a grounded first hub and extending up to the expansive seventh hub in the service of gaining access to a richer and fuller experience of life. Amen. The top-down approach of creation covered in this chapter works in the reverse direction, beginning in the luminous seventh hub and descending through the other six hubs with ever increasing densification in a process of becoming grounded in the physical world. We turn a dream into a reality to further the fulfillment of our lives. of our lived experience rather. The process requires navigating the paradox of creation because the work is both easy, flow state, and hard, resistance. You've experienced relatively effortless manifestation at certain times in your life, but this is manifesting's next level conscious creation. Here, I provide a high level overview with exercises by no means exhaustive that help overcome obstacles faced in the process of building and creation. So, this paradox, creation is easy and hard, addresses a common misunderstanding and belief that inspired creation is and should feel completely effortless. Because of this, when we encounter difficulty, we may believe it's a sign we're on the wrong path and that we should turn back. But struggle often indicates that we need to grow and transform to become the person capable of our aspiration. It's an unavoidable part of building wonderful things. We begin the undertaking in a state that's incapable of creating the end result, but become capable through the pursuit of achieving our goal. It's the work and the struggle that shape us, often sanding down the rough edges of adaptations. This chapter and the exercises it contains are inspired by Anodea Judith's work and by her Creating on Purpose workshop, as well as by my experience of building successful organizations and also writing this book and doing a number of other things in terms of creating my life, personally. But yeah, I think one thing I think that I'll actually, after reading that I will address that comes up a lot is that, and this relates to doing the upward current where we work through fear, we work through guilt and shame, anger, grief, isolation. We work through understanding these facets of ourselves because in the creation process, all of these aspects of ourself are going to be challenged. One of the first gates for most people is, who am I to do this? Who am I to be somebody who builds this? Who am I to be the person that creates something extraordinary? And that comes from shame, that comes from lower hub stuff. Because who is supposed to do this stuff? Like, who is qualified? Nobody is more qualified than somebody who's willing to try to do it. And I mean, yes, like for example, the best organization I ever built was the first one I built when I knew nothing about building organizations. Right, where actually, like, the only thing I knew is from, like, watching and observing and really wanting to build something better than what I'd been in before. And that was the best one I ever built because after that, there was definitely optimizations, but in terms of the most transformative organization that had the most juice from me and the most transformative qualities, it was the first one. And I bring this up not to talk about myself, you know, but to make the point of, you become the qualified person by doing it. And there's that thing, I was thinking about this, I don't know, not in this context, but about how, like, you see, like, contests with kids, and remember when you were a kid and, you'd be, like, 12 years old, and there'd be some kid who's like, "I've already won all the awards, and I went to this summer camp, and I went to this, and I went to that." And it's like, you go, "Oh, shoot, I guess I'm, like, really behind, and this person's probably a lot better than me." But there's I'm trying to think of the way to explain this. But there's the uniqueness of your ability to create and your conviction and your purpose. How many times, do you find, is it revealed that the person that was, doing all of these, camps and things had a parent who was like a stage parent, or a parent who was having their child sort of live their dream vicariously or whatever, and I'm not saying this is always the case, but I'm just pointing to this as a possibility, is that the power of you connecting with something, and we get into how to connect with it. So sometimes people will say, "Oh, wait, but this seems like a lot when I don't even know what it is." We figure out what it is. It's not uncommon for people to feel very disconnected from like, what is the work that fulfills me? What is my dharma? And the inquiry, the first step that we'll get into, examines that. But okay, I don't want to go too far afield from this because I'm super spacey right now in my head. It's like that kind of weird, like, kind of like headspace of being in a cold head. But yeah, I guess the point that really comes through here is that if you were the person qualified to achieve your aspiration, I mean, it's kind of boring. The energy needed to create the best work comes from this kind of excitement of exploration. And you see this, I mean, I see this in companies where there's people have built things successfully a number of times, and there's kind of a deadness to it. It's like it's functionally operational, but there's like a lack of enlivenedness in it. So it's like that quality of, of being very activated with like attention and care and intent and conviction is very powerful. So whatever it is, so coming into this and a couple, like, in the preparation, I think I did like a prep video on this. There's two things, because we're going to read the next part of this reading is a little bit more background for like the overview of what each of these 7 stages contains or like includes in terms of the process of creation. And but in preparation, there's 2 things. One is creating space, and another is creating energy. Creating like a sense of gratitude, of positivity, of joy, like finding it in music, finding it in movement, being able to activate that. It's really important because that's going to really you need the fuel. So finding it, listen to some music, like Chris and Teeb music. I keep recommending. It's extraordinary. And also creating space, get rid of things, clear out clutter, clean, there's like, you're really making room for like new things. And the more you can stretch that into, getting rid of like books that you're never going to read again. And it's like, and they're kind of, just, old stuff in the kitchen that you never use, go through your closets and just like make all the clothing in there be clothing you're kind of like want to wear, you're excited to wear. And also in that, you're making room for new clothing. There's new space for new things. Everything that you're pulling out, every book that you're pulling out, every kitchen thing, every whatever, I'm just using the first things that come to mind, but it's like when you pull them out, the stuff that's like kind of old and not useful, first of all, you make the things that you really value shine, and also you make some room for even more new exciting things to enter into your space. So with that said, I'm gonna go rest now. I'm happy that I showed up today and being sick. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So, yeah, the next reading, we're going to get into this. And, I think there's a lot of value in the self-help that offers comfort. But it's the value, it's is really, I think, extracted like specifically if you're aware of of what you're doing, of providing comfort for yourself, of regulating your nervous system and why that's regulating your nervous system. A lot of self-help is not going to change anything, but it's going to subdue. So the anxiety that we're approaching a situation with, like an angst or a sense of uncertainty or fear or just like, of overwhelm, realizing that we're like comforting ourselves, like that's what we're doing, that the mechanisms that are contained in all of this stuff don't actually address address the underlying issue. It's not, doesn't mean that they have no value. It means that there's something very important about feeling comforted and spoken to and encouraged and offered hope. But in terms of transformation, I mean, while there is transformation that comes through grace, once again, it's this paradox of flow state and resistance, that both of these things come together, where it's like we achieve flow, but then also in the transformation of becoming who we become in the process of creating things. It involves challenge, and I think that's one of the things about self-help, so to speak, is that it reaches most people in a state where they need comfort more than anything. And understanding that transformation also is like activation is incredibly important to actually change things. So to comfort yourself, to soothe your nervous system, to actually regulate yourself, but ultimately the repeating pattern will happen if you can just if it's just calming oneself down versus enacting some level of activation to create change. And change, and I don't mean in like a conventional sense. I mean change in the sense of looking inward and being able to see things that are even more uncomfortable. Like that's it's really great. So but to see is to unveil. And once it's unveiled, it's revealed, released, and it's how we achieve freedom through this methodology. Yeah. It's not very encouraging, is it? All right. So that's a wrap for me today with my cold hair. And I'm sending you a lot of love, and I will see you next time. Bye for now.